Hey, Anthony, thanks for joining today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's interesting with the podcasting is where you meet people. Sometimes it's through referrals, references, there's podcasting groups and everything else. But we actually met through a couple of common people in our network. And somebody else I had on this show, Kate, and he just actually threw a big networking event that you were part of as well, too. One of the speakers there. So that's
Yeah.
very cool, man.
Yes.
So, what a couple different things because I do want to get into a number of different items with you, but I actually want to talk about that experience specifically because speaking is a big deal.
hmm
And honestly, I think that's one of those major fears when people talk about big fears of life. Public speaking is actually one of those major deep level fears and stuff like that. Did you have a motivation prior to this? Was it just a spark or like I need to be up on stage, or is this something you're aspiring to be? Is this become a speaker?
When it comes to speaking directly, it's only really been a thing for the last 2 years, honestly. It,
Yeah.
it wasn't until I went to the first ever Ripple Effect event. Initially, I didn't even feel like I belonged in that room. Like, I felt like I was so far misplaced from even being around higher level people. I was like, I don't even need to be in this room right now. But Mrs. Viterini, Caden's mom, is my life coach. She forced me to go,
Nice.
dragged me to go to the event. So I'm sitting there at the event and I'm like, there are people my age on stage doing what I could do. It just sparked in my mind that they are the same age as me. I don't feel like I belong in this room, but they're talking on stage. What am I doing wrong? It led me to sit back and ask myself, like, how do I get involved? Why am I not involved? For the first time ever in my life. And as the night went on, seeing all the speakers, seeing Caden speak, seeing others, like I said, my age speak, I went up to Caden at the end of the night, looked at him in his eyes. I said, Caden, I want to be on that stage one day. Like, this is, for some reason, I have this drive to do what you did. I don't even know how to get there. I don't know what steps to take. But it was from that night when I got into a room that I literally didn't feel comfortable in. That's when this dream was born. And I think that's a key takeaway. Is
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, and we all know the saying, comfortable, uncomfortable. You got to be comfortable to get uncomfortable. That was very true that night. I was very uncomfortable, but I had to get comfortable being uncomfortable in that room. And I got so comfortable that I ended up being on that stage 2 years later, the exact
That's,
same stage that I wanted
yeah.
to be on. So now, doing it for my first time on that stage, being able to share my story, being able to talk to a crowd of over 300 people, it really shows that you are never too far gone. If you think that it's out of reach, it can really happen if you put the work in. And I had to put a lot of work in. I'm not going to lie. Mrs. Viterini will tell you for herself. I thought I was so far gone, but really I wasn't. I was one yes away from seeing my
Mm-hmm.
dream. I was one yes away, which I think is super important. And Marcus Black talked about it. He was one of the speakers at the event. One yes can change your life. My
Yeah.
yes to Mrs. I mean, she forced me to go pretty much, but it was like I still didn't have to show up. But
Yeah.
I knew that there was something there subconsciously, and I said yes. And that yes brought me to that stage 2 years later. And now that's what I want to do. I want to be a public speaker. I want to talk to people. I want to impact lives. I truly believe that God gave me that gift to speak, and He gave me that opportunity as well. And the both of them coming together created an impact that night. And I'm very blessed to say that.
That's phenomenal, man. I love to hear it. You touched on a number of different things too. I love those the yes that can change your life,
hmm
and so we're going to talk about a few different things that you
Yeah.
just said. And I love there was a sense of when you talked about it, like out of the gate, you went there, and there was a sense of self worthiness or a
hmm
belief pattern, and we
hmm
all do that. It doesn't matter how old, how young. We have these moments in time where there is a belonging or an imposter syndrome. It's inevitable. It's part of the human experience.
hmm hmm
So to recognize that, and then you also had a strong calling or desire point. So like,
Yeah.
there's a few different things you brought up that I'd love to touch on here with
Of
these. And
course.
we'll expand on each. Not everybody has that. So
Mhm.
not people don't. I think that we've all been to networking events or speaking events and things like that, and they're like, "Oh, that'd be cool. I feel like I got something to say," but I'm going to just go out on a limb, and I shouldn't generalize, but I would say most people would just initially squash that out of themselves.
Mm.
And whether it's a self worth or a belief, that's to be determined. And I'll say one more thing, and then we'll jump in. I'll have a couple questions for you. But I was going to say when it comes to self belief or self worth, there's the belief. I think that you can break it into a few different things, but I'll bring up three. One is I. On the big picture, I think as humans, we go, is it possible? Like just
Mhm.
period in a story.
Mhm.
And has someone anywhere in history done it? Okay, yes, it's possible. Then the next is it possible for me?
Mm-hmm.
And you go there and you're like, if you have that visceral gut feeling, or it's like that excitement, you're like, yeah, it's possible. You go there. And then there's a sense of a personal value or self worth. Am I deserving of this? And there is a distinction in there between the worth and is it possible? And when those things kind of align, and even if they don't align, but you just have the strong desire, like it sounded like you just had an overwhelming, strong desire. You're like, I need to be that stage. That's it. And you run through the gamut of that. But I think that the belief patterns is incredibly important. And you have a few different, man, there's so much to talk about, but let's do this. You have a few different kind of, we'll call them keynotes or key takeaways or rules to live by, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
And there's things that inhibitors on the other side of these things, but let's run through some of those three key true high end levels of approach or belief, or I want you to explain them. I don't want to get ahead of our skis here. So go into those three things and then we'll deep dive on each one of them.
Of course. So I do want to touch on, before I get into those three things,
Yeah.
something you said, how, sometimes we see someone do something that we want to do and we want to do it, but we don't think that we're capable of doing that. And it's crazy because our biggest self-critic is ourselves. We do that all the time. So many people will come up to us and they'll be like, hey, you have a gift. You can do it, man. I see it in you. You could do it. And we're like, yeah, man, but no. It's like, why? Would you ever walk up to somebody else and be like, hey, you suck? But why would we tell ourselves that sometimes? If we wouldn't say it to someone, if we wouldn't say it to our best friend, if we wouldn't say it to someone we believe in, why do we say it to ourselves? Luke Belmer said, and I did bring this up in my speech, it was one of my opening statements, was the only limitations in your life are self-imposed. Like, any time someone said that they saw something in me and I chose not to believe it, it was a limit that I put on myself. No one else came to me and said that I couldn't do it. It was what I put on myself. Now, when someone else does say, hey, you can't do that, that's not you, like, you got to realize that it's like, no, that person's just being negative. So there's a difference there, because you truly should love yourself enough. And I think that's hard, is a lot of people don't truly love themselves. And I think that you have to get to a point where you really do love yourself and who God created you to be. Like I said, everyone has a gift. Everyone's uniquely designed. We all have our own unique gift to put those two together. And I think exploring how you can use that is the fun part. And then once you find that out and you really put that out to the world, that's when the impact is created. And the cool thing is every single one of us has that. So that's what I wanted to add on to that. But to those three things.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. Those three things. One, you got to surround yourself with good people. Who you surround yourself with is ridiculously important. And I didn't realize it at first, but I was a product of an unsafe and unmotivated environment for the longest time, and it reflected in my life. You've heard it. I've heard it. I'm sure the viewers have heard it. Who you surround yourself with is who you are, especially the 5 closest people, right? You are the sum of who you surround yourself with. So if you look at your inner circle and that they're not headed towards success, they're not headed towards greatness, they're not humble, they're not patient, they're not kind, they're not gentle, they're not loving. If they're not those things, you might want to take a step back and look in the mirror to see if you're reflecting the same values that you see in your friends. Because for the longest time, I wasn't that at all. I'll not even close, right? The second thing is being resilient. You gotta be resilient. If you do not give up, your dreams will happen. The only way your dreams do not happen is if you decide to give up on them yourself. Because no one's going to give up on your dreams besides you, because they are your dreams. You know what I mean? It's almost like common sense there. But a lot of times we just think, like you mentioned, that we're not deserving of it. But who's to say that? Why? And then the third thing truly is just nothing's impossible with God on your side. Absolutely nothing. I mean, nothing. I believe he is a miracle worker, merciful, loving, good. When you lean on his understanding and not your own, man, the divine intervention is so beautiful. The impact that it can have. Going on that speech, Paul, 3 days before, I switched it up.
Oh, yeah?
I switched up my intro 3 days before. If it were up to me, I'd be so nervous. I would be so nervous, but I wasn't. Because my pastor told me, hey, you get on that stage, open your mouth, and let the Holy Spirit speak through you. And
Absolutely.
the impact will happen. You need to trust. The biggest thing was trust. I needed to trust. And when I put
Yeah.
my trust in God, it didn't fail. It
Yeah.
led me to be on this podcast, which is such a blessing being on this podcast. I love this opportunity.
Thank you.
So if that comes to show right there that just from 2 years ago
Yeah.
to now, the ripple effect, no pun intended, to what the event is called, the ripple effect of it really does come to fruition when you trust in God, when you surround yourself with good people, and when you never give up on your dreams.
It's phenomenal, man. Oh man, such wisdom. I really dig it. There's a lot of depth there. So let's do this. I want to expand in each one of those three just a bit and see where it takes us.
Mhm.
And I'm going to go backwards because I want to talk about something. There's the faith, which we're going to get into in a deeper way. But I
Yeah.
actually want to touch on something about the pastor said, just open your mouth and let that flow, let the
Yeah.
spirit flow through you.
Yep. Yep.
So the way I see a lot of this too, when you get into conversationals or if you're like a conversation or you're free flowing with somebody and connecting with that human being,
Mhm.
you're able to listen, process, share, observe. You're able to exercise these things when you're truly in those states of flow. And sometimes it's self-contained, like when you were talking about getting up there and speaking, because it's a different set than actually communicating with somebody. But
Yeah.
I really, the way I see it too is that I always think of it as that there's a river that runs underneath. And when that river of knowledge, of insights is genuine and there's a deep belief and understanding, the words are irrelevant and the
Mhm.
actions are irrelevant. You'll
Mhm.
have people come up or talk about giving a speech or a TED talk or whatever it is. And they'll be like, all right, your posture and your actions and all amazing. You want to be groomed and everything like that. So there's something to that. So I'm not knocking that, but the sense that it's some of that stuff to me is very secondary because when
Mhm.
you're truly attuned, the core messaging, all the words will come.
Mm.
They'll flow. The right words will present themselves. And because some of it is it's I believe is we're just pulling from that deep knowledge and we're giving it. If we're truly giving it as a process of helping others to heal or being of service, again, those words will come out in the correct form for
Yes.
the divinity of the exchange and the sharing. I really believe that.
Yes.
So I love the advice that the pastor gave you as
Mhm.
far as just allow those words to come through you
Yeah.
rather than you trying to force them. Because
Yes.
I think that's what we do as people. We might over contrive or we like, I've got to say it in this certain way in this inflection. There's an absolute value to practice. So I'm not saying don't practice, but when you're truly there, if you're so rigid, you can get stuck up here. That's when people can get stuck a little bit. You obviously were in a great state of flow when you delivered that, and even pivoting or changing, and we'll call it like on the 11th hour in the last minute.
It's
Yeah.
cool that you say that, how sometimes we can just get in here, besides just trusting, we can get into our own head. And the biggest battle in life is right in between here. It's like, what, 6, 7 inches right here. Biggest battle in
Mhm.
life. It's like, how do we overcome this every single day? And I had to talk with Marcus, who Marcus Black is a phenomenal speaker, by the way. I just had to shout him out. He told me, because I was on stage rehearsing the day before, and I'm up there and I'm blanking. I can't even get through the first 45 seconds of my speech.
Yeah.
Like, I'm blanking. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh no, like, I'm nervous. What is going on? Why can't I get these words out? Because all day, I had practiced my speech all day the day before, right? Nailed it, nailed it, nailed it, nailed it, nailed it. Get on the stage, blank. Just like that. I'm like, how does that happen? It's all because I was in here. I'm thinking, am I saying the words right? Am I creating emotion? Do I know what I'm going to say next? Is my hand placement right? Am I walking the correct way on stage? Am I moving too much? And and Marcus explained it this way, when you have all these things going on, your brain doesn't know how to process all those things at once. So when the computer does this little thing, that's what
Hmm.
was going on in my mind. I wasn't able to get out what I just needed to get out. So when I finally went on stage and I put all that aside and I said, hey, God, I'm putting you first in this. You want the crowd to feel? Let that happen. I'm all for it. Let's go. You
Love
need
it.
to do this. I truly believe that I was called to speak this year because I was supposed to speak last year, believe it or not. So
Hmm.
2 years ago, the dream was born. Last year, I was going to speak. I missed the meeting because I was playing basketball. Like, it was dumb. So I didn't
Sure,
speak
sure.
last year. But it's interesting how these
Yeah,
things work sometimes. I don't believe in
absolutely.
coincidence. So this year, the fact that I got to listen this year, or I got to speak this year, I truly believe that it was the perfect opportunity at the perfect time. And
Yeah.
and it's crazy how those things happen, but now I have the knowledge to no longer get in my head. That was the thing. And that was honestly just from listening. I think that's a big core thing just in life, just to put that as a little side note, like a sticky note. Listening is super important because if I wouldn't have listened to Marcus, I would have went on stage and I probably would have been in my head. But because I was able to listen to him, which I learned I got humbled many times in my life for not listening. So because I was able to listen, take the advice, apply the advice, it led to a really good night, you know?
Yeah. Timing is immense. It really is. There's so many times in our lives that we expect and then we don't get it. And the
Mm-hmm.
disappointment and the upsetness and the anger and all these little things that come out of that. But then you go on with your life and you get something different, or it looks different, or it feels different. And in hindsight, you're like, oh, I see it. The dots connect backwards, like the Steve
Right.
Jobs quote, in that sense. But that's nice that you got that advice, because I'll tell you, as you were explaining that, I'm sure people will resonate with that feeling. Your brain goes just
Blank.
blank.
Yep.
You're like, I can't even speak words right now. I have
Mhm.
no clue what to do.
Yeah.
you know, forgot everything. But if you think about it too, is that sensory overload, because you had the body movement, you were talking about it, you have the body movement, the delivery, the cadence, you were probably breathing so fast at that point too. You're probably almost just about hyperventilating and having an
Mm-hmm.
anxiety attack or whatever. And I'm accelerating my speech pattern there just as a dramatic flare. But yeah, you were probably really on overloads. But it really does go back to that. I'll use the word faith and that trust, and trust the delivery and trust. And also, one other thing that kind of was thinking about too while you're delivering that was a sense of, there's a shift of the purpose. So when you're by yourself, and I've done this too with the podcasting and some other speaking and stuff like that. When you're by yourself, there's a delivery in your head. You have this idea and a concept, and you're like, and and I don't want to assume what anybody thinks, but there's this idea of this altruistic, like, I'm going to expand this wisdom to people and they're going to be so appreciative and it's going to be great and it's going to be inspiring and there's all these things. And then that's the purpose driven aspect of it. And it feels incredible and there's a charge and it's beautiful and it's pure. And then what you described too is then you get to the reality of it and you start adding stuff to it. So there's the purpose change. The purpose all of a sudden becomes the now, like physicality of the delivering and the look and the expectation, and now the bounce back and what is my feedback from my made up imagined surroundings. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a really cool, and that's not just speaking. Like, you just nailed something that people go through all the time,
Mm.
making decision making process. That's not
Yeah.
just this.
Yeah.
People do that. They have analysis paralysis about the most mundane things. We do that. We're incredibly creative human beings that have the ability to overcomplicate things. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm.
so let's keep going backwards and we'll continue to deep dive in these, because I think
Cool.
those are amazing lessons that you brought to the table. Capture the second one again, because we're going backwards. And then we'll go back to the faith one again too, but the middle one again. So hone the process. And when we first talked, it was something about, it was a quote or it was some deliverance about a sharpening or honing.
Yes. Yes. So I said,
Iron sharpens iron. Okay,
yes.
I love that. So
Yes.
this is about surroundings. This is your environment. Is that kind of the premise with the number two? So reiterate number two a little bit for me, just
Yeah.
for a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. So to open up my second point, it was Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Um, you need people in your life who are going to pick you up when you're not really feeling it. And it's during those days where you need to listen, pull through, and be resilient. You need people in your life who, on days, because we're not going to feel 100% every single day, but you need people in your corner who are going to lift you up and sharpen you on a day to day basis to get better, to push past the limits, to break those barriers. And that way you can become more accustomed to being resilient and disciplined. If you do not give up, it's going to happen. It's going to take time. But if you consistently go every single day and you have people
Yep.
in your corner that are sharpening you on a day to day basis, lifting you up on days where you're not feeling it, you're really going to see a change probably quicker than you would have anticipated. But you cannot give up. And because I tied in the first point of who you surround yourself with is important, transitioning that into being resilient, and I combined them with this one quote, and I love it. It is, I talked about how you need people in your life who are going to give you the hard truth. And that's the part about iron sharpens iron. You need people that are going to give you the hard truth, because If they're not willing to give you the hard truth, then you might want to question if they actually love you and want the best for you. And then I
Yeah.
said, I quickly learned that the human desire to hear difficult no's sometimes makes one deaf, but listening to those difficult no's can build up one's character. For the
Beautiful.
longest time, if anyone told me no for something that I wanted for myself because it was out of love. Sometimes you got to have those hard conversations where no, I don't think
Yeah.
you should be doing that. And it's out of love. That I wouldn't listen to. I was completely deaf to taking self-criticism, self-accountability. When someone else would give it to me and I had to take it, I wouldn't take it. But what
Yeah.
really helped me build up my character to really get that iron sharpening iron is to really listen to those people that genuinely loved me and wanted the best for me, and to really listen and apply what they were saying into my life. My life coach, Mrs. Vitorini, she gives me the hard truth. And I would not be in the position I'm in today if it wasn't for me learning how to listen to that hard truth, which is a key aspect of that iron sharpening iron. And then it's when you apply that to your life, that's when you need to be consistent and be resilient, because that's when you'll see your goals come to fruition.
I love it. Yeah. And it's interesting while you're saying that too, is what keeps coming to mind is the environment, your environment
Mm-hmm.
around you. And I do believe we thrive through adversity. It is part of this human experience that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And it trial by fire, battle hardened. These are those times where the dualities of the what we perceive as good or bad
Yeah.
come into play.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we want to just go hide in what we think is good, these darks, those shadows really are what gives us the initiants to propel into creating something better and above
Mm-hmm.
in a greater, more beautiful way. So
Mm-hmm.
to have the people, like you said, with the environment, just an inclusive, so there's the humans in there, but we also create our surroundings with either work environments or physical, like fitness environments. Then as we go on to your young man and stuff, to get married, or now a family environment that you build and you create, and the safety within those and the security within those are immense. They really affect our lives. If we don't feel secure, if in some of these arenas, it really can weigh on us as adults or just humans in general, and it impacts the other aspects of our lives. It's so important to create the surrounding and the environment. So I'll say one more thing, and I want to hit resilience too.
Yeah.
Even to achieve things like when we're really we're in a flow state, and I'm sure you know about flow states.
Yeah.
Some of that is, I believe, too, within the security sets where you change your environments, you change your security sets, you change, and that's in an emotional capacity, in a physical room capacity, in your environment, being able to shut down the outer world. The more that you can really strengthen that arena of your environment, I think you putting that into your speech is an incredibly
Mm-hmm.
powerful message. And it's a very expansive one. So I just took a little bit of a different route with it, but you're touching on a big subject matter. And we're just condensing all this information very quickly. So,
Yeah.
and the other thing too is with resilience, it's like kind of words are funny because they can have different meanings to different people, or different response
Mm-hmm.
mechanisms to different people and stuff. And when you say resilience, I think of what the image that came to mind was like a willow tree or bamboo, because the wood is so strong, but it's very flexible. It's
Mm-hmm.
resilient. It's able to take on different attributes. Like the willow tree can fluff off water and wind and snow and big weights, because it allows it to just go past it. And the bamboo bends and
Mm-hmm.
it's not too rigid. And if your environment is too rigid or you're too fixed, you don't do things like you don't listen,
Mm-hmm.
because you already know. You know what I'm saying? The know-it-all. I
Mm-hmm.
already got the answers. I don't need to hear anything. I already know
Yeah.
what I'm doing. So you close your world off. So to become an effective, I couldn't agree more with you, to become an effective critical observationist of yourself and the
Mm-hmm.
allowance of taking on, we'll call it advice or influence of other people. Now, the bookends of that, obviously, you have the life coach that is truly out for your benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Other bookend of that are people that are out for their own benefits, that are trying to manipulate and tell you that you're good or you're bad or whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
But our ability to, if we feel safe, or if we still feel secure, we're able to process that for our highest and best. I truly believe. So to
Mm-hmm.
build those environments, I think that's an incredible point. And I didn't mean to go off on a big tangent. I
No.
just really think you brought in a very deep knowledge point on that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to totally take the stage. If you have another thought in that arena before we go back to the first one as your surroundings, but
No, I think that's fantastic. I really do. Staying
mm-hmm,
in momentum is super important, which the term of flow, I would just, right?
mm-hmm,
That's like
yeah,
riding that momentum out. Yes.
yeah,
It's action. You need movement. You need to create movement. You need action. When you take action, that's when you start to ride that momentum. And that's what's going
mm-hmm,
to take you. That's what's going to get you to flow. That's super important. But you're never going to fully take advantage of it. Just like going back to what you, if you're not really self-critical, if you're not
yeah.
listening, if you're not opening up your ears, if you're not doing that.
If you close yourself
Yeah,
off to the world or your surroundings, yeah.
exactly. Like you can't be a know-it-all, like you said. You really
Mm-hmm,
can't be because we're not. I think it was, I could be wrong, so anybody can fact check me on this. But even Einstein said he knew less than 1% of everything. It was something like that. And it's, you think of him and you're like, well, that's a smart guy. And it's for me to think to myself that at 21 years old that I'm a know-it-all, that's just rooted in pride. That's not going to get me anywhere. That's going to get me absolutely nowhere. That's ego. What kind of ego am I supposed to
yeah,
have at 21 years old? No, I'm supposed to be humble. I truly believe we never stop learning in life. And Adebayo Kuye, who was at the event, he spoke. He said, success is not a destination, but success is a
correct.
journey. And it truly is. Success is a journey. Like we never stop learning. It does not
Yeah,
ever stop. To think that you get to a certain pinnacle, you reach a certain goal, you make a certain dollar, just to think that you've reached that you're done, that's wrong. I'm
right.
sorry. It's very true though. It's wrong. You can always improve. If you're at a fantastic spot financially, what about mentally? Where are you there? Are you
Mm-hmm,
mentally resilient? Are you mentally shredded? Physically, are you in good shape? Are you taking care of your body? Are you eating good foods? Are you working out? Spiritually, what's your connection like with God? Are you striving to build yourself up every single day when it comes to that aspect? Because we're not just physical beings. All these things are super important. And you got to listen. You got to be humble. You got to ask questions because that's where that true growth comes from. You can't be a know it all, like you said.
yeah. And you right out of the gate with the movement and the momentum, creating momentum in the building process of that,
Mm-hmm.
and the continued growth. That's it's absolute. It's like a flower. If a flower stops growing, it means
Yeah.
it's dying or it
Yeah.
means it's dead.
Yep.
So it just the growth potential. There's always a building process. There's always another step, another iteration, another view, another perspective, even on the same stuff. I'll tell you, at my age, I look at the same thing that I looked at 20 years ago, and to me, at this stage in my life, it's different. It's
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, not, but fundamentally, how I perceive it and where I am at, and I'm a different person than I was 30
Yeah.
years ago.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And there's another point, but I want to get to I'll go back to the first one and then we'll make some overarching points on your pillars there. So the first one is your kind of network. There's a lot of different sayings out there. I think, I don't know if it was Bob Proctor or one of those guys, Zig Ziglar or something. Your
Mm-hmm.
network is your net worth,
Yes.
your surroundings, the people that, and the influence of, and as you go on with life, again, too, I brought up if you create a home environment and a family and you get married and you have kids and everything, or if it's a work environment, social environments, if you're surrounded by people you'll hear people, corporate culture or whatever, cancerous, that are constantly complaining, constantly focused on the negative. And that would be a big subject in itself, but we'll just touch on that, is
Mm-hmm.
just that negative activity. There's an erosion. I don't care who you are. It affects you. It impacts you. Even if you're the strongest individual and most grounded person in the world, of it over time, there's a slow erosion where it just wears on you.
Mm-hmm.
And either you stop trying around them, or B, you just give up because it just feels, and you can go on in these environments. But the people around you are very important. The people that you choose to be around, and whatever that is, even if it's family, if it's close friends you've known a long time, if there's not an alignment there with where you're going, because in all honesty, like I just said, I'm a different person now than I was when I was 20. So the
Mm-hmm.
people I had in my life then, it's not that anybody's fundamentally a bad person, but I'm a completely different person. They're a completely different person too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that as people grow and continue to evolve, I'm just going to go out and say something that might sound a little bit callous or cold, but we don't have to hold on to people just because we know them,
Mm-hmm.
if we want to achieve, grow, and do incredible things. Again, it's not because the people in our life are, inherently bad or anything like that. but trajectories and growth patterns can change. Or it's beautiful. You've known somebody for long and you both are on a growth pattern. So I want to play that out too. I don't want to, I don't want the lesson to be like dump everybody and try to find a new group.
Yeah.
But I think that's just the observational essence of your surrounding. And I think be observant, be aware, be mindful of it. It's very important. And if you see the patterns, it's not run around just being like, you guys are all terrible and I'm wonderful and I'm out of here. It can take time for relationships to develop in different ways. And sometimes it's uncomfortable and sometimes it hurts and might not even be pretty in certain ways. So, and I'll just say one other thing too, is as we grow as individuals too, and I don't mean to get so preachy here with you, but as we grow as individuals, we ask for a better life. We ask for bigger and our version of what's bigger, better, and our aspirations and expansiveness, regardless of what it is, good, bad, ugly, or imagined, it's different. And people have certain programmed expectations of us. And if we subvert their expectations of us, sometimes people get very angry. But this goes into your environment where if you have the right people around you that really want the best for you, genuinely for you, not for them, but for you, they will grow and be open to you as you grow and change and evolve. Again, there wasn't really a question there. I think I just wanted to really expand. I felt compelled to expand on that thought.
That was awesome. Yeah. So to touch on the last thing you just said there, or actually, I'll go to the first thing. I'll work my way through. So Paul writes, "Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character." That was something that I meditated on for a long time because I was really
Corinthians.
Huh?
Is that Corinthians?
Yeah, 1 Corinthians 15:33. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. You got that memorized. Oh man.
Yeah. Nice. Because that really hit me hard. It really did. Because I was like, whoa, bad company corrupts good character. Okay, it sounds very simple, but who am I surrounding myself right now that, because I'm trying to better myself, but who am I around where I see that best version of myself, and who am I around where they pull that old self out of me? Because
and you allow it to happen too. You even allow it to have them pull that out. You almost mold back into it to appease them sometimes. We all do that.
Exactly. It's like sometimes when you're very spiritual, your life starts to change very rapidly. And sometimes when you get around who you used to hang out with, it's like, I want to just show them that I'm human too. And we go back to our old ways a little bit when truly that doesn't fulfill us anymore. And here's what I want to add on to that too. You don't need to cut people off. No one ever said that you need to cut people off. You don't need to do that. But what you should do is you should put boundaries. I think that's the biggest thing. Boundaries. Like just the boundaries. Just say, look.
Bumpers, boundaries, limits.
Yeah, exactly.
Work within this arena and the honesty and open communication. And
that's the biggest thing because I still talk to my older friends. I was in a fraternity at Western Michigan University. I didn't cut those guys off. I love those guys. Those are my boys. Sigma Chi, Zeta Nu. Those are my guys. Western Michigan University. I can't cut those guys off. I'm just no longer in the frat. And I just don't party like I used to. That's the only thing. I just don't go and involve myself in that space as much. But that's anywhere. I did it in South Dakota. I did it here in Chicago. I did it in Michigan. I did it everywhere. It doesn't mean that in those specific areas I cut those people off completely. I still talk to people in South Dakota. I just don't go out and do those things that I used to do. If they do it, that's fine. I have no judgment towards them. We're all living our own life, and we should live our life with zero judgment because we're all created by God, and all of us have sinned to our name. So I truly believe that we shouldn't be judging anyone. No one's better than anyone else. I truly believe that. You should be very humble and loving when talking to other people. But I don't cut those people off. It's just, hey, I'm sorry. I don't do that anymore, but that doesn't mean that I'm not here for you. That doesn't mean that I'm going to block you. That doesn't mean that I'm not a resource for you. That doesn't mean that I can't pour into you. Hence, you can pour into me. That doesn't mean that availability is no longer there. It is still there. I'm just no longer going to participate in those things anymore because that's not what truly fulfills me. And then to go ahead and touch on your last part where, like, there's going to be some people that try to bring you down. The only people that really are going to try to bring you down, they're never going to be people that are more successful than you. It's always people that are under you. It really is. You're going to see people that you used to hang around with. It's like you believe in your mindset. like those listening to this, because I know people that listen to this podcast are driven, so that you're different. That there's something about you that's just not normal. You're not average. You're different. So when you get around people that you think are just not, I guess you could say, like on the same frequency as you, right?
Sure.
It's okay. Like I've seen a lot of people, for example, talk bad about Caden and Vit Factor. And it's like, how do you, in my mind, I'm like, how do you even do that? Do you see what this 21-year-old kid is doing? He's pulling 60, 70-hour work weeks. Nobody sees what goes on behind the scenes. I've been his friend for
Right.
14 years. I see what he does. And there's nobody, like nobody that is above in success, because
No, I got you. Yeah.
you're not better than a
Yeah.
human
Yeah.
being.
Outworking him or
Yeah,
absolutely.
just
Dedicated.
entrepreneurship, longer in the journey. You understand what I'm saying? No one's gonna talk bad about Caden. If there's somebody at a higher
No,
net worth, they're gonna try to lift him up. If there's somebody that's an executive,
absolutely.
a CEO, a high level entrepreneur, they're gonna try to bring him along. But if there's somebody that's under, and what I mean by under is like somebody that is just
Yeah.
very negative. They're on a lower frequency. They're just very negative. Somebody that's not positive and driven, but somebody that's lazier and more negative. They're going to try to drag that person back down to get them on their level. And that's just the reality of things. I've never seen anyone that has been on a higher level of frequency than Caden try to pull Caden down. I've only seen people that are lower level, that are negative, they're lazy, they talk bad about people. And it's sad because like I used to do that. I lived that for my whole life. So the only reason that I can say these things now are because I lived that. That was me not too long ago. I was doing things that were, I was never sober, just to keep it a buck. I was never
Mhm.
sober. So that obviously drags you down. And when you see people that are doing things that you wish that you could do, of course you're going to talk bad about that person.
It's a reflection of you. It's a reflection of what your perceived
Ex-
failures are.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And it's a hard pill for some people to swallow. Like it really
Absolutely.
is. It's very
Yeah.
humbling. But
Yeah.
once you can get past that realization, once you can have that hard conversation, that's where a lot of growth happens. Because you're like, okay, I'm not in the position that I want to be, so I'm talking bad about this person that's in that position that I want to be in. Okay, instead of me talking bad about that person, what are the flaws and the vices in my life that are holding me back from getting to where they are, because I want to be where they are, but in my own way? It's like, what is holding me back? And it's what we talked about earlier. You being able to listen, you having that self accountability. That's what's going to be able to make you grow. I had to take a ton of self accountability for growth. If I never
Yeah.
listened to the hard things, if I never learned how to be resilient, if I never, all the things that we've talked about so far, if I never applied those things, I would not be where I'm at today. There's no chance. And I'm no high level CEO, super rich, driving in Bugattis in Dubai kind of guy. That's not me. But when it comes to living a life that was never sober, living a life where I was in such a negative mind space where I didn't see any purpose, I didn't see any hope for my future, to now being more driven than ever, sober minded, and seeing my purpose and having hope, it's 180. And it's when you apply these principles to your life, that's when the change that everyone's been waiting for, that you've been waiting for, happens. But it's a big humbling thing. It really is a big humbling thing. And for me, like, it was very hard, like I said, to swallow at first. But once I finally did, once I finally put my ego aside, that's where the growth happened.
Oh, I love it, man. Yeah, you brought up some great points there too. And I do that you brought up the reflection. And you gave me a great reminder as well too for the compassion. Because I was talking about the dark side of letting people go, relationships go, and things like that. And it was really interesting how you brought that back, because you don't have to let them go. And the compassion and the empathy that you can have for other human beings and keep them
Mm-hmm.
in your life. That is some of the journey. That is living in service and living as a teacher, living as giving, and again, living in service. You can live by example, and people do watch and they do learn. But the reflection point of somebody else being somewhere that you want to be, the perception of the resentment. You see that person there, but you didn't see the 60-hour weeks, the 7 days a week for the past
Mm-hmm.
10 years
Mm-hmm.
of doing something to get somewhere. And there's assumption that it just came easy somehow and you could do it smarter, better, faster, and everything else. So there's a resentment there and people criticize it. So I do appreciate you bringing in, because you really reminded me about making sure to communicate that compassion and empathy to those other people.
And
So
that's the biggest thing, is also
yeah,
just to touch one more thing, is when you pull yourself out of that, like when you're in the rut and you take the self accountability and you learn and you apply and you grow as a human being and you pull yourself out of the rut that you used to be into, the biggest thing is having compassion for people that still don't know how to get out of their rut, the people that still have no clear vision for their purpose and hope. Because just because you found yours doesn't mean that it's now your job to talk down on those other people, right?
Absolutely.
Like that is a non-negotiable. That's not something that
Right.
you can do. Now that you've been able to pull yourself out of that with the resources that you have, it is now your job as somebody that has been able to be uplifted to help uplift other people. Now that you're higher, reach your hand down and pull them up. That's what I truly believe we're supposed to be doing as human beings, lifting each other up. Those that are in a negative place, that are a little bit hard-minded, hard-hearted, give them an example of what it looks like to be somebody that can be so humble, so compassionate, so loving, so kind, so gentle, someone with self-control, all the fruits of the spirit, Galatians 5:22 and 23, all of those things, someone that possesses those things so dearly to their heart, to where you can be that example to really lift them up. And because when
Mhm.
someone sees that example, that gives them hope. If it wasn't for
Mhm.
me seeing examples in my life of people who I started to surround myself with, my closest friends, my family, right? If it wasn't for these people, then I would have never saw the actual hope. But I saw it with my own eyes of people that were in the spot that I was in and they got out of it, which gave me the realization that, hey, this is not impossible and I am not too far gone. I still have a chance. I might as well fight. And it's that fight, which takes some time, that got me out of that. And when you get out of that, like I said, pull people up with you. That's the coolest thing ever. Seeing people transform and transcend into who they are called to be. And when you are in the play that God has called for that person, that is the coolest thing ever.
That's incredible, man. And just so you know, you were in an incredible state of flow there. Your words were so on, man. That was poetic.
I
And which
appreciate
leads actually to the overarching, which is that incremental thought of 1% better all the
it.
time. And everything that we just talked about, this whole really feeds into that, dovetails into that just perfectly, because
Mm-hmm.
the idea of that 1%, and I know that you're part of the 1% team, but I'm just talking about truly that idea, the conceptual idea of being incrementally better every day, every week, every month, quarter, yearly, and everything. So you're continuously improving. And there's days that we feel like we dropped 5% maybe,
Yeah.
like, but when you show up and you're consistent, builds that proof of concept to build your confidence, to build your self-worth, to know you can do it and get through the hurdles. And I may have said this already, but I don't really necessarily believe in the word failure, because there's these lessons that we're given and then we get to do things. We get to go through these trials. We get to overcome them. And that's all a gift. And the fruits of the spirit, you just said there. Touch on that incremental 1% as an essence, as an idea, as a big picture, a small picture. I just want you to free flow with that.
to to put it, when you wake up versus when you go to sleep, what did you improve on? What did you learn? Like you said, failure. You don't believe in it. Neither do I. Like, it's when they say you win or you lose, I don't think it's a win and lose. I think it's a win and learn. I
Yeah.
truly do. It's a win and learn. So in the morning to the night, there's going to be days where you win. You truly win. And there's going to be days where you don't lose, but you learn. And it's in that process of you understanding what happened when I won and what happened when I learned. So then that way I can apply that the next day so I don't make the same mistake again. Because when you do the same thing over and over again, that's the definition of insanity. So when you can apply what you've learned and apply what you've won, those aspects into the next day, that's when you grow. And that's where you get 1% better every single day. Like when I go to sleep at night and I put my head on that pillow, I have to think to myself, am I better than I was when I woke up this morning? And if that answer is no, I didn't give it my all. Because every day you wake up, you shouldn't be, I'm going to do my best today. I'm going to do my best. No, I don't believe in doing your best. I believe, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to give it my all because tomorrow's not guaranteed. If this is my last day with my family, the last day with my coworkers, the last day with God on this earth, and the last day here in the physical body, I got to give it my all. We don't know when our time runs out. If we do not take the time to learn about ourselves and our gifts and to strive to become 1% better every day, then we're not truly living our life to the fullest. I truly believe. I've never met a human being that's like, I don't want to live my life to the fullest. I'd rather just suck. I've never met anyone like that. Everyone knows that they have a gift, or at least I hope that they do. I pray that they
Yeah.
do.
Or the understanding or the essence of it. They might not
Yes,
recognize what their gift is.
yes, thank you for, yes, that's what I mean. Everyone does have a gift. Everyone is super unique. And it's that process of winning and learning every single day, becoming 1% better every single day, being better at night than you were in the morning. That's where you really get that growth. And you strive each day to then become closer to figure out what your gift is. And then once you pinpointed it, once you got the thumbtack on it, this is my gift, that's the fun part where then you get to figure out, okay, how do I use it now? And that's the fun part because it's then how you use your gift. That's what leads to your purpose. And that is
Yeah.
the coolest thing is when you're living your purpose. And that takes a while. It takes a while. It's not easy. It is not easy.
Yeah.
No way.
But there is purpose with even in progress. You feel a
Yes.
purpose-driven life and you feel fulfilled. It's just that little bit of when you feel like you're making progress, honestly, that is really when I don't want to say that's when we're the happiest, but I'll tell you there's a deep sense of fulfillment in that window.
Very. Even the small wins. The small wins are
Absolutely. And celebrating the small
man.
wins.
Yeah, I truly, and I want to tell everyone that's listening to this. I don't know if anyone's ever done this exercise, but think about the worst thing you ever had to go through. Like, what really left you feeling depressed? What really left you feeling anxious? What maybe had you contemplate life to get that deep? Like, genuinely. Because if you're listening to this, it means that you learned and you won, you pulled out of it, and you're here. That is something to be proud of. That is something to be really proud of. You did that. Which I think a lot of us don't really sit back and reflect on all the tough times in life. It's, man, if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be who I am today. Being inside of it during that learning phase, that learning day, it's not easy. It sucks. It feels like there's a lot of weight. But when you look at it long term, that delayed gratification of what's to come, and when then you're there, when you're living in the times that you used to pray for, you're going to look back and be like, man, at that time, I really didn't see it, but now I'm very thankful I went through it because I would have not learned that. And that's just specifically touching on the tough times because every single person in life has gone through tough times. Every single person. And there's not one tough time that's greater than the next. All of us have tough times that have affected us in some way, shape, or form to a great extent. It is so cool that we get to live those moments. In the moment, it sucks. But growing from that every day, that's, like you said, that's fulfillment. When you grow in that.
Yeah. And the recognition in there too, but you nailed it. The things that you pray for, when you become that, to have that recognition and remembrance and gratitude is incredibly important because it's easy, especially when people are really driven and want bigger, better, more, whatever version of that is for you. And even the sense of fulfillment, because we really want to feel fulfilled, feel whole. There are times in my life where I'm like, I'm worked up or I'm not. I'm like, just like, oh man. But if I were to think back and be like, honestly, 5 years ago, if I would have looked in a crystal ball and saw me today, I would have been so excited, like so grateful. Right? But then today I'm like being ungrateful and I got to check myself. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. You shake yourself off. And one other thing too, is when you were talking about what I thought of when you talked about getting out of bed and being like, oh, I'm going to do my best versus just put it all in. It's the mentality. What came to mind was the mentality of playing to win versus playing not to lose. So it's just playing not to lose is way different than playing to win. It's like playing below the bar. I just don't want to lose today. So I'll just do things just to get by. Yep. And just because you're not doing the wrong thing doesn't mean you're doing the extraordinary thing. Thanks. Because sometimes people do that. And I sometimes associate, if I'm talking about that, like being a parent. Everybody knows what a bad parent is. And just because I'm not being a bad parent doesn't mean I'm a good parent or an extraordinary parent. It's different. But every aspect of our life can be like that. How are we showing up? How are we waking up and attacking the day, or going to bed and really feeling fulfilled and stuff? Just acknowledge what you said there. But so here, man, this has been phenomenal. Really great conversation. I really enjoyed this, and I appreciate the 3 pillars we went through, and we really got to deep dive in them. I feel like there's so much more we could really continue to talk about here.
Oh yeah.
So I almost hate to cut it off, but we've done a phenomenal job. So we might have to have a second one here soon.
I,
Where can people find you? I know that you're an incredible growth trajectory, and we had talked. You're in process of building a brand, and that'll develop in its own time and own gestation period. So where can people find you today, or if they want to work with you, or reach out?
Of course, if anyone wants to find me today, I'm very active on Instagram. It's just my name. It's Anthony Kasper. I'm very active on there, as well as LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Anthony Kasper, the exact same. I am in the process to build out a website, to really get my name out there, to do all these things because I do want to get my name out there. That's why I'm very blessed, Paul, that you had me on this podcast today, because this is just so cool. I'm literally living my dream right now, just being able to talk about these kinds of things, which I think are super important. So,
Yeah.
yeah, right now, those are the 2 main platforms I would definitely go ahead and reach out for me. But also, I am going to be posting on YouTube very soon, where I'm going to be talking about a lot of the things that we talked about today, which is really cool that there's an introduction. Like you said, there's so much more that we can unpack here. Believe it or not, this was surface level. Like, we can really get deep into it. But that
Yeah.
Instagram at Anthony Kasper, LinkedIn, connect with me there. I would love to do one-on-one calls with anyone listening, just to pick brain. I like to learn. I like to ask questions. I like to hear people's perspectives on life, who they are, what they've been through, what they overcame, because I think it's really cool. And we don't ever get into someone else's mind unless we ask those questions. So I think that's the coolest thing. I only know what's in here. If you don't ask me the question, you'll never know. I don't know what's in yours. Unless if I ask the question, I'll never know. So that's where a lot of growth happens too. It's human to human interaction. So if there is anyone that's out there to get on a one-on-one just to pick each other's brain, I'm totally open and down for that.
I
I'm
love it.
sure.
Yeah, just open a network, open a communication, and yeah,
Exactly.
and develop those
Exactly.
future relationships. So
Yes.
awesome, man. Thanks again for joining tonight. This has been phenomenal.
Yes. Thank you so much. God bless.
Absolutely.